global macro investor.
And you were one of the few managers to foresee the great financial crisis.
Yes, and so right now we're very excited about AI, and we should be very excited because it's going to be revolutionary changes, but it's creeping into almost everything. The way I look at it is I look at the human body, and I see like it's replacing the body and so on. And then it replaces some aspects of the mind, levels of thinking and reasoning. But at the same time, we have another problem that's exists with geopolitics. I mean, China is a larger trading partner with most countries than the United States is.
And that's a changing of the world order.
That is one of the ingredients, right? And then also you've got large wealth gaps. The government don't have enough money. And so when you have the downturn, then you have people at each other's throats.
So a lot of people, they're thinking about how to sort of secure their future. How do they all prepare?
Let me say that history has shown that it's not the most intelligent people that are the most successful. But the key thing to keep in mind is
what is it that makes bubbles pop? So if we are in an AI bubble at the moment and it is going to pop at some point, what is the, like, they call it a black swan event?
There are a few of them. There are bubbles and then the things that prick the bubbles, okay? The things that prick the bubbles, typically in the beginning, are something that means that I have to sell some wealth to get money. And that's usually a rise in interest rate. It could be something like wealth taxes, something that means I'm very wealthy, but typically the tightness of money, because during that spot, there's inflation pressures and central banks decide that they want to tighten monetary policy and so on. It becomes that the amount of money that I can get by owning that debt at the higher interest rates is greater than the amount of money I could get on my equity investment. That's part of it. Also, what you see is a lot more production of stock. And what I mean by that, issuance of stocks. Think of the supply and the demand. There's demand, right? And we've been talking about the demand that makes stocks go up, you know, how we create this wealth. But there's also supply. So you can issue stock. It's very issue. There's almost nothing that's easier to produce than stock.
So if I own a company, I can just print.
هو بيتكلم هنا على كلمة مخزون، هي مترجمة غلط. بيتكلم على الستوك اللي هو السهم، اللي هو الشير، الأسهم بتاعة الشركات. هو بيتكلم دلوقتي اللي هو ما فيش أسهل من إن أنت تعمل شركة وتدرجها في البورصة وتنزل الأسهم بتاعتها والناس تستثمر، فبالتالي يخش لك فلوسك. وطبعا طول ما التقييم بتاع شركتك عالي على الورق، يعني أنت دلوقتي صرفت 50 مليون علشان تفتح الشركة بتاعتك، بس على الورق قيمها قد إيه؟ بعد ما تضربها في الملتلاير بتاع السيكتور بتاع سي مثلا تحت شركة ليها علاقة بالاي اي او الذكاء الاصطناعي، ودي الحاجة دلوقتي اللي هي البومينج، فالشركة بتاعتك انت ممكن تكون صرفت عليها 50 وتكون بتدخل لك في السنة عام 100 مليون دولار، ولكن الملتبلاير بتاعك او المضاعف بتاعك 20 اكس او 30 اكس. ده معناها ايه؟ معناها ان هي بتدخل 100 بس اضربهم في 20، يعني الشركة بتاعتي تساوي 2 مليار دولار. فسهل جدا ان سيادة تقوم تدرجها في البورصة وتبيع حصة منها سي مثلا 30% منها ويجي لك تلت ال 2 مليار دولار اللي هي حوالي 600 ولا 700 مليون. طب انت الشركة دي انت جالك كاش فيها 600 مليون عشان تبيع تلتها بس، مع انك مؤسسها ب 50 مليون وهي بتدخل في السنة كلها بتدخل 100، انت بعت تلتها ب 700 مليون دولار. فده الجزء اللي هو بيتكلم عليه، اللي هي يا اما رفع فوائد او اللي انت بتعمل ايشوينج اللي هو اكتتاب للاسهم بتاعتك في البورصة.
More equity.
Yes, today you could probably go out and say, I'm going to make a company and I'm going to take it public. And you go to your audience and your crowd and you can say, I'm going to make stock. Okay. So it becomes when there's a market that wants stock, there's a production of stock.
And
and that supply of stock together with the other that I'm mentioning, the need for getting money and so on, causes the bubble to pop.
Are you seeing signs that we're in a bubble?
Yeah. The classic signs that we're in. And the bubble, I should emphasize, it's not a, you're in a bubble or you're not in a bubble. It's a degree thing. Okay. There is also that it's in we can. I can look at now who is in these companies, right? And is it in strong hands or weak hands? Classic strong hand is that when weak investors, not knowledgeable investors, then put a lot of money into it, particularly if that's in a leveraged way.
Another way with debt.
With debt.
leverage اللي هو الكونسبت، خلينا برضو نشرحها سريعا علشان هي مترجمة، اللي هي نفوذ. الليفرج ده اللي هي الرفعة. لو انت فاكر واحنا عيال صغيرة كان بيبقى فيه لعبة كده، انت سيادتك بتقعد هنا وطفل تاني بيقعد الناحية التانية، بيبقى فيه سوستة تحتكوا صح؟ فاللعبة دي بتبقى عادلة علشان المثلث ده في النص، منطقة الارتكاز في النص. لكن لو المثلث ده اتحرك شوية، يعني اتحرك الناحية دي، فالطفل الراجل اللي قاعد هنا بأبسط وبأقل إفورت أو مجهود أقل إفورت هيقوم مطير الواد ده لفوق. ليه بقى؟ علشان هو دلوقتي معاه حاجة اسمها ليفرج أو رفعة، العصاية الطويلة دي اللي هي بعيدة عن المركز بتخلي الناتج يتضرب في أضعاف بالظبط زي الكوريك اللي سيادتك بتستعمله علشان ترفع العربية. عندك عربية اهي، لو سيادتك نمت تحتها وحاولت ان انت ترفعها بإيدك مش هتعرف، ولكن لو سيادتك استخدمت الكوريك وقمت حاطط الكوريك تحت العربية وفي عصاية اهي وسيادتك وقف بأقل مجهود نزلت العصاية، العربية هتترفع. ليه؟ مش علشان انت اديت مجهود اعلى، لكن علشان انت استخدمت الليفرج ككونسبت. طيب الليفرج بالنسبة لنا في الفلوس اللي هو بيتكلم عليه ايه؟ ان سيادتك مثلا عندك سهم حابب ان انت تشتريه، والسهم ده يسوى يا عم $100 وسيادتك معاك $1000 في ايدك، فسيادتك هتعرف تشتري قد ايه؟ 10 اسهم بس، صح؟ علشان 10 في 100 يدي لك ال1000، فالفلوس اللي معاك تخليك تشتري 10 اسهم، 10 ستوك. طب افرض انا جيت وقمت قايل لك كبنك او كسمسار كبروكر، قمت قايل لك بقول لك ايه، ما تاخد $9000 هديها لك ان انت تستلف، ولما ترجعهم لي يا عم رجعهم لي وادي لي فايده فوقهم 1% مثلا. فسيادتك دلوقتي هتاخد ال9000 وانت كان معاك 1000، فبالتالي بقى معاك توتال كام؟ 10000. ال10000 دول يشتروا لك بقى كام سهم؟ هي دي الفكره. ال10000 دول يشتروا لك 100 سهم، فانت في الاول كنت بتشتري 10، دلوقتي بقيت بتشتري 100 سهم. طب انا ليه اعمل كده؟ علشان في الطبيعي لو السهم ده زاد يا عم 100%، يعني السهم طلع من 100 بقى ب$200 السهم، سعره زاد 100%. لو سيادتك كنت حاطط 1000، الفلوس بتاعتك دي ال1000 هتبقى 2000، صح ولا ايه؟ طب افرض انت شارب 10000، ال10000 دي هتبقى كام؟ 20000. فانت دلوقتي بعد ما ترجع من ال20000 الفلوس اللي انت تسلفها هيفضل لك $11000، فبالتالي انت مبسوط جدا. ليه؟ علشان انت في البدايه كان معاك 1000، دلوقتي بقى معاك 11000. ليه بقى الزياده الرهيبه دي؟ ربط الفلوس الاصليه بتاعتك في 11x، علشان الليفرج او الكونسبت بتاع ان انت استلف فلوس علشان تضاعف العائد بتاعك سواء بالمكسب او بالخساره. فده الجزء اللي كان بيتكلم عليه في حته الليفرج.
Or they can buy a leveraged version of like there are ETFs now that are leveraged versions of the stock market and so on. And so they get into that. It's more like their crapshoot. Okay. And then that's a sign of a bubble. So I've listed a few of those signs. Those are the major signs of those bubbles. And so that when it goes down, then you get the fear, then you get the need to raise cash, and that dynamic works its way out in the form of then the reverse happening. In other words, everything becomes cheap and everybody has the spending and the things you mentioned.
If we are in an AI bubble and it is going to burst, I had a friend of mine contact me and he said, Stephen, I think we're in an AI bubble, and he's running an AI company. So he said to me, I'm going to raise lots of money now so that when the markets come down and investors are fearful, they don't want to invest in companies, people stop spending as much, they start thinking about their subscriptions and start cancelling subscriptions, we're going to be good and we're going to be able to buy up some of our competitors who are going to be struggling. So he's just raised hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars for his AI company.
Right. And it's probably like that. Easy.
Yeah, it was easy now.
Right.
The question here is like, what should, at different levels, so like the average Joe on the street up to entrepreneurs that are running companies, how do they all prepare for an economic bubble that might burst?
He's such a good example. And what that does, and just following up through on what we were saying a minute ago, is that increases the supply of AI stock.
Okay, yeah, because he sold stock.
Because he's going to sell more.
Yeah.
Right. And so as he and others do that more, this greater supply of stock comes in. And so he wants to get ahead of it in that dynamic. And then, that contributes to the bubble. But how do they prepare?
How does the average person?
I would also say something. The future is very unknown, and people should not be timing. Sophisticated investors have a real challenge even in timing a bubble. So the important thing always is to diversify. Now we're going to go back to money, the basics of money management. And I by the way, I personally have gone through the cycle because I didn't have any money, and then I had a lot of money. And I remember the cycle very well. What happens is as you start off, I used to count how many months I would be okay, a certain amount of money, how much I would be okay if no more money came in. If I lost my job or whatever I did, I worked 2 years for somebody, but in other words, if money didn't come in, and it would be months and then years and so on to build that security because I have to take care of my family and so on. And so what, as we're
هنا
looking
بيتكلم
at
على الامرجنسي فند او اللي هو صندوق طوارئ، وانصحك بجد في فيديو عندي بيتكلم على الحريه الماليه والطريق بتاعها. لازم سيادتك تكون عارف الخطوات، علشان اول خطوه خالص هي صندوق الطوارئ اللي هو بيتكلم عليه، اللي هو لو انت حصل مشكله اتطردت من شغلك غيره، بيبقى معاك زي من 3 شهور ل6 شهور يامنوك علشان ما تاخدش قرار غلط او تاخد طريق غلط ياثر على القرارات المستقبليه بتاعتك او ياثر على حياتك قدام.
these things. These are the choices that you have in order to be able to say, do I buy my house or apartment? Do I put my money into cash? And what happens to money is you have to put it into something because they'll pay you interest on it. Okay. So that's your cash deposit and so on. And people think that that's the safest. It's not. It's the worst investment over a long period of time because because inflation will eat it away.
You mean putting it in a bank, just leaving it in a bank?
In whatever form, a money market fund, whatever it is that short term, I'll deposit it and it'll give me an interest rate. Okay. And that's what they think about as cash. Nobody leaves it literally in cash, because if it's literally in cash, it doesn't earn interest. So why shouldn't I put it there and get some interest on it? And so that's cash. And people think that that's the safest. It has the lowest return, guaranteed almost to have the worst return over the longer period of time.
People keep cash because it feels safer.
That's right. And I'm saying it's not safer because of inflation.
Explain that to me in simple terms.
Okay. Well, if I got no interest rate, then what I would do is I'd lose to the inflation rate.
And what's the inflation rate?
And 3.5% or 4% happens to be about where it is now.
A year?
Yeah, a year.
So that I lose $3.5 a year.
That's right.
If I just leave it in cash.
That's right. Okay. Now I'll get an interest rate on it if I put it someplace, and it'll give me maybe an interest rate that's somewhere in that vicinity, similar to that.
4%.
And then I have to pay taxes on it.
Oh, you have to pay taxes on the gain. Okay, fine.
Right? Even though you really didn't gain relative to inflation, you still have to pay the taxes on whatever you've earned or something. Anyway, over the long term, it's a lousy return. Because also think about returns also come from productivity. And over a period of time, people learn how to do things better and so on. So then you can invest in, let's call this stocks. Okay. We'll call that the stock market. This is cash. And then you think on the stocks. And then the stocks can go up or down. And then they have this dynamic that we're talking about that creates these big cycles and the bust. And those cycles, when they go down 60, 70%. Okay. That's what a bear market looks like. Woo! What a dive. Okay. This is gold. That's gold. And these are bonds. And this is your house. And that's Bitcoin. Okay. So these are the choices. They each change for certain reasons. I'll digress into that in a minute. But what happens is they go like this. When gold goes up, tends to be that the bonds will go down in value, or your house. And these change in a certain way. And so the best thing to do is to have a diversified portfolio of that. When you have that, rather than any one, you won't reduce your return, but you will reduce your risk.
And diversified means having a little bit of each.
Right, a certain amount. And you have to know how to balance them because of their volatility. This one, stocks, is more volatile than this one. And my own recommendations are, you start, first of all, with what you need. Should I buy a place, or should I use that money and I could travel more and so on? One of the advantages of the house, the apartment, and whatever is it's your environment. Your environment is important. It produces forced savings. Sometimes that forced savings is good. It typically is taxed better. It's a better vehicle for tax over a period of time. But I'm not arguing for this alone, but I'm saying when I'm looking at this, then I think this one, gold, is very interesting, because when all of these tend to do badly, this tends to do well. Okay, so it's a very effective diversifying, because this was money, not until 1971, and it's still the second largest reserve currency. Central banks hold reserve currencies. So it has qualities that are different from this, and this has qualities like when the value of money goes down because of inflation, this...
Bonds.
Okay.
And bonds are basically lending the government money.
That's right. If you lend the money at a certain interest rate, and then inflation and interest rates rise, you're kind of locked into that interest rate. And so it has its own problems. The more important thing I would say is, you save up and you say, how many years can I live if money doesn't come in? Okay. And then you take that and you say, how could I be secure? So I don't want to put it into one thing that can go down 70%. So how do I diversify that? That's my main headline.
A lot of people in the comments of our last episode, they were asking this, like, how does this apply for someone who doesn't have much money, maybe doesn't have any assets? Say they're 30 years old, they have, I don't know, $100 disposable income, and they're thinking about how to sort of secure their future. What is the advice for someone in that situation?
Your only asset is yourself. And I guess what you're going to get from the government. How do you sell yourself at getting a better income? Or how are you getting money from the government?
Mm-hmm.
You selling yourself is the main thing. This is one of the big problems now with artificial intelligence and other machines replacing people and different types of jobs. It becomes more difficult. It produces that big wealth gap while you're having more productivity. Everybody wants more productivity because it means how do you produce things more efficiently? But that's contributes to the income gap, because your productivity equals your income for a large extent, and then you have the political dynamic. It's tough to get yourself out of this position that you mentioned. I'm imagining that person. Okay. It's not easy. There is this giant polarity. If you're in the top 10% of talent, let's say, the world's your oyster. But nowadays, in order to be there, okay, that's difficult. Find something that gives you the ability to sell your time for good money. Is that going to be that you're driving an Uber? Is that going to be that you have the talent and you're going to be able to understand AI and contribute that understanding to a company that values that? Or what is
بالظبط، هو الجزء ده اللي بيتكلم فيه وده اللي بيخش لي ناس كتير بيتكلموا فيه، اللي هو يقوم قايل لك انا مثلا بدخل اكس اماونت من الفلوس وبعرف اوفر منها زي مثلا $200 او $500 كل شهر، المفروض استثمرهم فين او احطهم فين؟ فساعتها الرد المباشر اللي بيتقال للشخص ده ان سيادتك المفروض تستثمرهم في نفسك. يعني ايه تستثمرهم في نفسك؟ يعني تتعلم حاجه تعرف تزود بيها دخلك، ولكن $100 الزياده اللي انت تحوشها كل شهر مش هتفيدك بحاجه ومش هتدخل لك الار اي او العائد اللي في بالك. لكن $100 دي لو انت اتعلمت بيها حاجه، خدت بيها كورس، اتعلمت بيها سكيل، وايا يكن انت عملت ايه، ولكن انت طورت او عملت ابجريد للشخصيه بتاعتك، اعتبر نفسك انت في لعبه بتاعت جاتا. كل لما تطور الشخصيه بتاعتك اكتر، كل لما تدخل فلوس اكتر، فساعتها يجي لك جزء اكبر من الفلوس انت مش محتاجه. يعني قبل ما تروح كده وتدي فلوسك لاصل من الاصول وتقول ان الاصل ده هيكسبك فلوس وتقول ان الاصل ده هيخليك ثري، فبالتالي الاضمن ان انت تراهن على نجاحك قبل ما تراهن على حاجه ان هي اللي تنجحك. لان في الاول في الاخر الدهب ده عباره عن ايه؟ عباره عن ميتال، معدن يا عم، حته طوبه. فما تقولش اصل الفلوس انا بستثمرها في الدهب. وباي ذا واي، هو لما كان بيتكلم دلوقتي بيقول ان الاستثمار في الذهب ما اسموش استثمار. ليه؟ علشان هي دي الفلوس. دي عامله بالظبط زي واحد بيقوم قايل لك اصل انا بستثمر في الفرنك السويسري، ما اسموش استثمار. دي اسمها فلوس، شكل من اشكال الفلوس، لكن مش استثمار. فان انت تحط فلوسك في ذهب، انت كده بتشتري شكل من اشكال الفلوس، شكل افضل من الفيات كورنسي او اللي هي العملات الورق اللي بتستعملها، ولكن ما اسموش استثمار. طب سيادتك حطيت الفلوس بتاعتك مثلا في اسهم شركات، فبمجرد ان انت تحط الفلوس بتاعتك في شركه مثلا زي تسلا، فانت بتحطها علشان شايف ان تسلا هتكبر. طيب ما تشوف نفسك، يعني بدل ما تراهن على الشركه ان هي تكبر، راهن انت على قدراتك ان انت تعرف تدخل فلوسك. وبعد ما تدخل مبلغ كويس تقدر ان انت تستخدم الفلوس دي ان انت تستثمر، ولكن في التانجبل اسيت او اللي هي الاصول الملموسه. علشان الفلوس اللي انت صرفتها على نفسك ده استثمار، ولكن في انتانجبل اسيت اللي هي اصول غير ملموسه، اللي هي زي المعرفه بتاعتك، زي السكيل بتاعك. فهي الفلوس ما اتحرقتش، انت استثمرتها، ولكن استثمرتها في اصل غير ملموس. طيب امتى بقى تبدا تخش في الاصول الملموسه؟ لما تكون انت قفلت اللعبه، لما تكون فعلا خلاص مش عارف ان انت او السيتويشن اللي انت موجود فيه مش عارف تعمل ابجريد للشخصيه بتاعتك اكبر، مش قادر ان انت تستثمر الفلوس دي في نفسك فتدخل فلوس اكتر. ساعتها تقوم ناقل على التانجبل اسيت او اللي هي الاصول الملموسه، سواء في شركه شخص او شركتك انت. ما الشركه بتاعتك انت دي عباره عن برضه اصل ملموس، ولكن انت تقدر تتحكم في شركتك والبيزنس الخاص بيك، ولكن ما تقدرش تتحكم في ايه؟ في الشركه اللي انت هتستثمر فيها اللي هي زي تسلا، ولا تقدر تتحكم في السعر بتاع السهم. فده الجزء اللي هو كان بيتكلم عليه.
is your skill. You found this, okay, and you found the way, okay, but you need money, okay, and the thing that you want to do, what you're doing, and I'm lucky enough to do, is to make your work and your passion the same thing, and don't forget about the money part.
Yeah, I am. One of the things that I think I didn't realize earlier in my career is that whatever skills you have will be valued differently in different contexts or industries, should I say. So, for example, say that my skill here, and I'm not trying to flatter myself, but say my skill here is
working.
having conversations, right? Let's say that's what it is.
Yeah.
There's lots of places I could have conversations, and those places would value my ability to have conversations wildly differently per hour.
Right.
So I often think this and speak to my friends about this when they tell me their skills. I say, let's look at the different industries and how they would value the skills you currently have differently. A good example, again, you could be an Uber driver or you could chauffeur Ray Dalio. Now, I imagine those two things pay wildly differently, but the same skill of driving a car, broadly speaking.
I agree with all that.
And so I think that's one way to just, the other way is you go ask your current boss for a promotion. But again, they're going to value you in the context of their other employees, the market in that industry, etc. So you might get 10%, but you're not going to see a step change necessarily. So that's something that I always say to people.
Absolutely right. And another law of something, and I think it's almost a law of everything, it's a law if you buy almost anything, is those at the top, whatever the thing you're buying, if you're buying a painting, a piece of furniture, a piece of clothing, a person's time or whatever, command premiums that are many multiples of the average. It's almost like if you could invest 10% more of your time, your effort, your skill to go up, okay, you will get twice as much.
Invest
for 10% better,
تستثمر.
something like that, okay? So that's part of the formula of life.
تستثمر في نفسك، فبالتالي لما انت تعلي او تعمل ابجريد لنفسك انت بيبقى ليك بريميوم اعلى بكتير من اللي انت بتكسبه دلوقتي. يعني من الاخر الحاجه اللي انت بتعملها زي ما هو قال لك دلوقتي، لمجرد ان انت مثلا شغال اوبر، فانت الشغلانه بتاعتك ان انت بتسوق عربيه، ولكن انت لو لو السواق الخاص بري داليو هتعمل فلوس اكتر بكتير من الاوبر، مع انك دي بتسوق ودي بتسوق. فالاستثمار في الذات، وده اللي هو كان بيتكلم عليه، الانتانجبل اسيت اللي هي الاصول الغير ملموسه. الاستثمار في الذات دي مش فلوس بتتحرق، مش فلوس بتضيع، انت بتكتسب قدامها حاجه، الحاجه دي هتدخل لك فلوس بعدين اعلى بكتير من الشركه او العقار او الذهب او الكريبتو اللي انت هتشتري.
And a formula of employment. And so I think if you keep what you brought up and what I'm bringing up in mind, that helps you position yourself and know what to do.
لو انت عايز تتعلم تقدر تخش على الموقع الرسمي بتاعنا xflus.com، وهتلاقي اللينك موجود في الديسكريبشن. هتلاقي في كورسات تساعدك ان انت تزود الدخل بتاعك وتعمل فلوس.
I probably should talk about it because people are talking about it a lot right now, which is or Bitcoin. What's your perspective on Bitcoin?